The morning was ordinary. I brewed coffee, letting the rich scent fill the kitchen, and slipped on my gardening gloves. The dahlias needed deadheading, and I was already thinking of which neighbor I might wave to from the fence. Then a sharp knock at the door. 3 firm raps that didn't sound like any neighbor's friendly visit. When I opened it, 2 people stood on the porch. Clipboards. Polite but unreadable faces. "Diana Williams?" one asked, their voice carrying a practiced official calm. "Yes," I said, heart ticking faster. "We're here about the guardianship." The word hung there, heavy and strange. "What guardianship?" I managed. The taller of the 2 exchanged a glance with her partner. "Your daughter has established legal guardianship over you." For a moment the house seemed to tilt. The familiar walls, the warm coffee smell. Everything receded. Just yesterday I'd been planning a trip to Portland to see an old friend. Now they were telling me I might not even hold the keys to my own front door. The day after the visit from the social workers, the house felt like a stranger's dwelling. Sunlight slid across the kitchen table in its usual stripes, yet every object, coffee mug, folded dish towel, the vase of late roses, seemed to watch me with quiet disbelief. I wandered room to room, touching the furniture as though confirming it was still mine. This house was more than wood and nails. My late husband, Henry, and I had built it board by board when we were both young and stubborn. I still remember the smell of sawdust in our hair, the blisters on our palms, the way we laughed at our own crooked attempts to hang the first door. I planted every tree in the garden myself. Lilacs for spring, maples for October fire. Every window held a memory of sweat and celebration. Now a sheet of legal paper threatened to sever all that. When I reached for the telephone to call my friend Marlene, the absurdity struck me. Even a simple visit might require my daughter's consent. I set the receiver down as if it burned. The social workers had left behind pamphlets about supportive guardianship and protective care, full of cheerful stock photos, smiling seniors in pastel sweaters, a younger hand resting lightly on an older one. Their paper optimism felt like sandpaper against my skin. I kept hearing my daughter's voice in my mind. "Mom, don't go shopping alone. Mom, you need someone to help with the bills. Mom, don't argue with the doctors, they know best." At the time, those words had wrapped around me like gentle ribbons of care. I'd even been touched by her concern. But now, replaying them, I saw each ribbon tighten into a noose of quiet control. The next morning I stood at the garden gate and stared at the dahlias. Their petals were loud with color, but I felt an emptiness, as if I were only a guest passing through. What right did I have to trim or water, when I might be barred from the soil itself? Friends called. I let the phone ring. Neighbors waved from the street. I stayed behind the curtains. It was easier than explaining that overnight I had become a ward of my own child. At night, loneliness sharpened. Henry's side of the bed remained a soft hollow, and I found myself whispering into it as if he might answer. Did we really build all this just to have it taken while I'm still breathing? The worst was the silence after the question. Bills arrived, but when I picked up my pen to write a check, I imagined my daughter's disapproving voice. "Better let me handle that, Mom." I put the pen down. The house, my pride, my proof of a life lived responsibly, had turned into a cage made of memories. Even the clock in the hallway seemed to tick louder, as if keeping time on someone else's schedule. Each small act of independence I once took for granted, driving to the farmer's market, inviting Marlene for tea, walking alone at dusk, now felt like contraband. The possibility of a sudden knock, another official visit, haunted every hour. One evening I tried to read, but the words blurred. I closed the book and simply sat in the dark, listening to the groan of the old floorboards. The house still knew me. I could feel it breathing with me. But for the first time in 30 years, I no longer felt free inside it. The world outside carried on, waves breaking faintly on the nearby shore, a dog barking 2 streets over, while I sat like an exile in my own life. I told myself I should be grateful I was safe, I was healthy. Yet gratitude tasted bitter when every decision had to pass through someone else's gate. It was 3 days before my daughter finally appeared. I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel drive, then the rhythmic click of her heels on the stone path. Through the lace curtains I watched her approach, carrying a wicker basket lined with a cheerful red cloth, as if this were some ordinary Sunday visit. I opened the door before she could knock. "Mommy!" she said, smiling too brightly, the basket rising like a peace offering. I brought fruit, pears, and those little plums you love. Her voice was soft as ever, sugar-sweet and maddeningly familiar. For a heartbeat I almost fell into our old rhythm, mother and daughter exchanging small kindnesses. But beneath the fragrance of ripe pears, something sour lurked. "Come in," I said, though the words tasted reluctant. She placed the basket on the counter and began to fuss with the fruit, washing and arranging it as if she still lived here. "Don't be upset," she said without looking at me. "All of this is for your own good." For a long time I simply watched her hands move, peeling away the sticker from a plum, tucking stems under leaves. The quiet kitchen amplified everything. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, the way she carefully avoided meeting my eyes. When she finally turned toward me, her smile was radiant and utterly false. "You've been resting, I hope? No need to go shopping right now. I'll bring whatever you need." There it was, wrapped in gentleness but hard as iron. No need to go shopping. I heard what she meant. Don't go anywhere. Don't act on your own. "And maybe let's postpone that Portland trip," she added, almost lightly. "We can plan something safer closer to home." Every word rang like a quiet lock sliding into place. I thought of all the conversations leading here. "Mom, let me drive you." "Mom, you shouldn't climb ladders anymore." "Mom, you forget things sometimes." Each phrase had seemed harmless, even loving. Now I heard them as the slow tightening of a rope. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm not fragile glassware. I'm perfectly capable of buying my own groceries." She tilted her head, the way she used to when I corrected her grammar as a child. "It's not about that, Mommy. It's about keeping you safe. You know how the world is." Her tone made me feel like a wayward child, a role I refused to accept. Still, something in me hesitated. It was my daughter standing there, my only child, the baby I once carried through sleepless nights, whose first steps I'd cheered. Memories of her laughter in this same kitchen tried to soften me. But the present pressed harder. Behind her kind words I could almost hear the legal chains clinking. Guardianship papers signed without my consent, social workers ready to enforce them. I set a plate on the counter with deliberate calm. "You didn't even tell me you were doing this," I said. Her smile faltered for an instant, but she recovered quickly. "It was sudden. We were worried. After Dad passed, well, sometimes grief shows in ways you don't notice. We thought it best to act quickly." I wanted to ask who we was, lawyers? Doctors? Neighbors whispering half-truths? But the question lodged in my throat. She reached across the counter and touched my hand. Her palm was warm, familiar. "Mommy, you raised me to be responsible. Please trust me now. Let me handle things for a while. Just until you feel settled." For a moment I almost believed her. The urge to surrender, to let someone else carry the weight, flickered through me like a brief, dangerous warmth. But then I remembered the hollow silence of the past days, the way my own home had felt like a cage. I drew my hand back. "I am settled," I said quietly. Her eyes hardened just for a second, a flash of something sharp and impatient. Then she pasted on her smile again. "Well," she said, straightening the basket, "I'll leave these pears. Call me if you need anything at all." When she left, the house exhaled around me. I stood at the window and watched her car disappear down the street. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. The fruit basket glowed on the counter, a pretty silent warning. Every plum and pear was a symbol of how easily care could be twisted into control. That night, as I sat alone in the quiet kitchen, the scent of ripening fruit filled the air, a sweetness laced with threat. The evening after my daughter's visit, I sat by the living room window long after dusk. Outside, the ocean wind combed the tops of the pines and brought the smell of salt and damp earth. The house, usually a comfort, felt like a hollow shell echoing with other people's decisions. I didn't turn on a single light. The dark seemed honest in a way that daylight hadn't been for weeks. I thought of Henry, how he used to say that freedom is not a gift but a habit, something you practice every day so no one can quietly take it. I'd smiled at the time, thinking he was being philosophical. Now the memory burned like a warning I'd ignored. Images from the past few days reeled through my mind. The social worker's clipped voices at my door, my daughter's gentle but unyielding smile, the fruit basket gleaming like a silent decree. For the first time, I let myself name what I felt. Not just confusion. Not just hurt. It was theft. They wanted my decisions, my independence, the daily authority over my own life. They called it care, but I could finally see the outline of the cage. I pressed my palm to the cool window pane and listened to the sea. I am 68, I thought. My mind is clear. I know the difference between a misplaced key and a stolen life. A quiet clarity opened inside me, crystalline and fierce. The fear that had sat like a stone in my stomach began to dissolve, replaced by something steadier, resolve. No one, I whispered into the dark, has the right to decide for me. The words felt both fragile and powerful, like striking a match in a cave. I pictured the legal papers, the signatures, the assumptions about age and decline. They no longer looked inevitable. They looked like obstacles to be dismantled. Enough hiding behind curtains. Enough waiting for permission. I would speak. I would act. I whispered again, this time louder. A vow to myself that filled the room. Enough. I will reclaim my life. The wind outside seemed to carry the promise, whistling it through the trees. For the first time in many months, my heartbeat felt like my own. Morning came braided with fog. I woke before the clock, brewed coffee, and wrote 3 lines on an index card in my neatest hand. I am of sound mind. I do not consent to decisions made without me. I request an independent evaluation. I slid the card into my sweater pocket like a small spine. By 10, tires hissed on wet gravel. My daughter again. No basket this time, only a manila envelope under her arm. Mom, she said in that careful office voice. Dr. Patel sent forms. Consent for the treatment plan, pharmacy oversight. Sign here, here, and here. She spread the pages on my table. Guardian dotted the paragraphs like tacks. No, I said, surprised at the steadiness in my throat. Not today. I want an independent evaluation. Her smile iced over. This is standard. It streamlines everything. I'm allowed to take the long way, I said. Worrying proves I'm thinking. She lifted her phone. I'll have Dr. Patel explain. A bright speakerphone voice burst into my kitchen. Diana, this will be helpful for your care journey. No need. Before any journey, a map, I said. Independent cognitive assessment. Not chosen by a guardian. Paper rustled. We can consider. My mind belongs to me. I'll arrange it. My daughter ended the call. I'll loop an adult protective. Loop to your heart's content, I said. No more papers until the evaluation. Color rose in her cheeks. For a second I saw the teenager who once stomped when I said no. Then she gathered the envelope and left with a neat, furious click. The house approved with a deep quiet. I called our old attorney Marvin Geller, prickly, precise. What happened? He asked. I told him. He cut in only for dates. Good, he said. We'll schedule with Dr. Lynn, neutral. Gather any documents your daughter asked you to sign. Keep a notebook. Record conversations legal in our state. If anyone shows up unannounced, say, my lawyer advises me not to engage without counsel present. Repeat it exactly. I can, I said. I will. And eat, he added. People forget. I smiled and made toast. By afternoon the pressure started. 3 unknown numbers left cheerful voicemails. Just checking, how are we feeling about supports? A text from my daughter, Mommy, you're scaring me. Refusing help is a symptom. I copied it into my notebook and answered nothing. At 4, 2 brisk taps at the door. A woman in a slate blazer smiled tightly through the screen. Ms. Williams? Lucia Rivera, Social Services. Your daughter said you had questions. I do, I said, keeping the latch. But not today. Please schedule through my attorney. We're only here to support you. Then support my right to counsel. And to an independent evaluation. Her gaze swept past me, as if competence might be spotted like mold. Are you eating regularly? Are you? I asked. I made lemon bars. None for drop-ins. She slid a card through the mesh and left. I logged the visit. Date, time, content, mood, steady, craving lemon bars. I added. Ask Marvin about a no trespass letter. The next morning my daughter called early. How did you sleep? Did you take your meds? I can reorganize the pantry. I slept fine, I said. The pantry and I remain on speaking terms. Mommy, this oppositional tone is unlike you. It's concerning. I'm concerned by people who mistake boundaries for hostility. I set down the phone, noted the exchange, and phoned Dr. Lin's office. 2 weeks. I drew the date large on the calendar and sketched a small lighthouse beside it. That afternoon, my daughter let herself in with the key for emergencies. She tossed her coat onto a chair and dropped a thicker envelope on the table. New care directives. Minimal. A visiting nurse and a medication manager. No, I said. We've covered this. You're acting incompetent. That accusation is a heavy coat, I answered. Try it on yourself before you throw it at me. Let's call Ms. Rivera together. Gladly. I put it on speaker. Ms. Rivera. I'm invoking my right to counsel and decline to discuss services without my attorney. I have an independent evaluation scheduled with Dr. Lin for the 14th at 9 a.m. Also, I revoke permission for unannounced access. Please coordinate via counsel. Paper whisper. Noted, she said. My daughter stared. You're making this adversarial. I'm making it procedural. Adversarial was deciding about me instead of with me. For a heartbeat something human crossed her face, hurt, fear, then shudders. You'll regret this, she said and left. Days settled into a pattern. Morning calls with leading questions, midday knocks from helpful strangers, twilight texts that said just checking and meant have you surrendered yet. I replied rarely and briefly, always with my notebook open. The chorus repeated the same 3 notes. We worry. Let us decide. Your resistance proves our point. Compliance will end the pressure. I learned my counter melody. I cooked. I patched a loose hinge on the back door. I weeded 3 beds and left a 4th wild on purpose. I phoned my friend Marlene and told her everything. Tomorrow at 10, she said. I'll bring coffee and a camera. If they show up, I'm your witness. A white sedan idled at the curb the next day. Marlene appeared in a red raincoat, planted 2 lawn chairs on the porch and poured steaming coffee. We sat like queens of a small country and watched the mist lift. The sedan rolled away. 2 days before the evaluation, my daughter made one last push. Sign the nursing agreement now and we can cancel the drama. Non-compliance has consequences. Autonomy isn't non-compliance, I typed back. It's adulthood. Then I put the phone face down and read 1 chapter of the mystery Henry loved. On the eve of the appointment, Ms. Rivera returned with a young man who called himself a consultant but wore a junior lawyer's shoes. They spoke like people who want to be recorded saying only reasonable things. Ms. Williams, our only goal is your safety, he said. Then honor my process, I said. If I'm impaired, we proceed properly. If not, the guardianship ends. It would be easier if you cooperated now, Ms. Rivera murmured. Ease isn't justice, I said. After they left, I baked cornbread and ate it hot with honey. Proof that I could still make, still choose, still sweeten my own evening. I laid out slacks and a blue cardigan Henry said brought out my eyes, checked my recorder, set the index card on my purse and slept like a stone. Morning broke clear. In the mirror my gaze met mine, steady at last. Whatever they said, whatever they tried, I had already stepped over the line inside myself. I had said no to control and yes to me. Pressure only suffocates when you believe the other person owns the air. I opened the windows, let the sea wind in and breathed. The morning of the independent evaluation opened bright and clean, as if the sky itself had decided to stand on my side. Marlene arrived an hour early. We sat in her car with travel mugs of coffee while gulls wheeled overhead, the ocean scent sharp and steady. Today I let her drive. I wanted my mind free of everything except purpose. Dr. Lin greeted us in a quiet office that smelled faintly of mint and new paper. He was a spare, calm man in his 50s with a way of looking directly at you without a hint of condescension. The tests began. Dates and sequences, reading passages aloud, recalling words in reverse order, simple math done aloud. He asked about daily routines, my garden, the Portland trip I was still planning. Nothing rattled me. I answered clearly, each response like a small stone placed firmly on a path. 2 hours later he finally smiled. Ms. Williams, he said, your memory is excellent, your reasoning sound. There are no signs of cognitive impairment. The words felt like sunlight breaking across a cold field. I thanked him, folded the signed report into a large envelope, and carried it as carefully as if it were a newborn bird. Marlene and I drove home in companionable silence. Back in my kitchen, I placed the envelope in a folder with my growing stack of notes and recordings, the careful diary of every call and visit since the day of the social worker's knock. Those recordings had become an unexpected arsenal. Each phone call captured the same refrains. Don't resist. This is just for your safety. My daughter's voice, once the music of my life, now sounded practiced, almost scripted. That evening, Marlene helped me copy everything to a flash drive and upload it to cloud storage. We listed dates, names, exact quotes. Every detail felt like one more lock clicking open in my favor. The next morning, I called Marvin, my lawyer. He listened without interrupting until I finished, then gave a low whistle. Perfect, he said. Dr. Lynn's report and these recordings are ironclad. We can petition the court to revoke the guardianship immediately. Later that day, I sat across from him in his book-lined office while he laid out the plan. We'll file a motion to terminate the guardianship and attach Dr. Lynn's report, he explained. These recordings will show that you were pressured and misled. Judges don't like coercion. This is very strong, Diana. As he spoke, I realized that, for the first time in months, the knot in my chest was gone. I wasn't simply defending myself. I was building a case no one could dismiss. That evening, my daughter called. Her voice was softer than usual, but the strain beneath it was unmistakable. Mom, she said, I heard you went to some doctor without telling me. You know that isn't valid. I just want you to be safe. I had started the recorder before I picked up. I feel safe, I said evenly. And Dr. Lynn is an independent specialist. His report will go to the court. Silence stretched across the line. Finally, she said, clipped and low, You're making a mistake, and hung up. I sat for a long while, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant surf. But the quiet inside me was different now. It wasn't the silence of someone cornered. It was the calm of someone holding the truth in her hands. Proof had appeared, and with it a certainty that no one, not even my own child, could rewrite the story of my mind or my life. The house no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a fortress built of my own words, my own memory, and the steady heartbeat of the ocean beyond. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and lemon polish, a scent that felt oddly reassuring. Marlene walked beside me, steady as a metronome, while Marvin carried the folder with Dr. Lynn's report and the recordings. My heart beat fast but not wildly. It felt like the strong, deliberate beat of someone finally ready. The hearing room was small, wood-paneled, sunlit through tall windows. My daughter sat at a table across from me, flanked by a young attorney and Ms. Rivera from Social Services. She wouldn't meet my eyes at first. The same hands that once reached for mine on playground swings were now folded tightly on a legal pad. The judge, a silver-haired woman with a voice like smooth stone, began with formalities, then looked at me directly. Ms. Williams, she said, you requested this review. You may speak. I stood. The room tilted for half a breath and then steadied. My name is Diana Williams, I began. I am 68 years old. I live alone by choice. I requested this hearing to challenge the guardianship established without my knowledge or consent. I handed Dr. Lynn's evaluation to the clerk. This independent medical report concludes I am fully competent. And I have recordings of conversations in which my daughter and social workers urged me to sign documents and to not resist. I will let them speak for themselves. Marvin pressed a button on a small player. The room filled with familiar voices. Mommy, don't make this hard. Just care. Don't resist. Hearing them aloud, stripped of context and charm, was startling even to me. Across the room, my daughter flinched. Her attorney shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Rivera's pen stopped moving. The judge listened without a flicker of expression until the final click of the recording faded. Then she turned to my daughter. Do you dispute the medical evaluation, or the authenticity of these recordings? My daughter's lips parted, closed, opened again. I only wanted to keep her safe, she whispered, barely audible. The judge's voice softened but stayed firm. Intention is not justification. There is no legal basis for this guardianship. It is revoked, effective immediately. The gavel struck. A single solid sound. For an instant everything inside me went weightless, like the moment between a held breath and its release. Marlene gripped my shoulder. Marvin allowed himself a small, triumphant nod. I exhaled fully, a breath I felt I'd been holding for months. Across the room my daughter finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet and bewildered. I searched for anger in myself and found none. Only a complicated grief and a quiet relief that the truth no longer needed to fight for air. Outside, the autumn light was sharp and clean. The courthouse steps led down to a row of maples already glowing red. Each leaf seemed to catch the wind like a small defiant flag. For the first time in a very long time, the world felt entirely mine again. A week after the gavel fell, the house no longer felt like a battleground. It was quiet in a way that belonged to me again. I packed deliberately, drawer by drawer, as if each folded sweater and wrapped plate was a small ceremony of reclamation. The decision to move had come easily. For decades this house had been a dream realized. Every board Henry and I hammered, every tree I planted. But it was also where the walls had closed in, where every knock on the door felt like a summons. I wanted a place without echoes of intrusion, a space that would carry only my own footprints from the start. By the following Thursday, a small house near the ocean was mine. The paperwork was signed in my name alone. When the realtor handed me a single brass key, cool and heavy, I felt the quiet weight of freedom settle in my palm. The new home is simple. White clapboard siding, a porch that faces the tide, windows that drink in morning light. Inside, the rooms smell of salt and pine. Each evening I walk the narrow path to the shore, the key warm in my pocket. The ocean greets me like an old friend, steady, tireless, beyond anyone's jurisdiction. Sometimes I pause at the edge of the water and think about everything that has happened. The shock of that first knock. The slow tightening of control disguised as care. The nights when loneliness seemed heavier than the roof over my head. And then the clarity. The vow to reclaim my life, the steady work of proof, the moment in court when the truth finally spoke louder than fear. The scars remain. I still startle a little when the doorbell rings. There are moments when I replay my daughter's softest words. I only wanted to keep you safe, and wonder where love ended and control began. I write letters I may or may not send, trying to untangle forgiveness from vigilance. Yet each sunrise here feels like a clean page. I cook what I please at the hour I choose. I invite neighbors for tea without consulting anyone. I drive into town for groceries and take the long way back along the cliffs, just because I can. Freedom, I've learned, is not an abstraction. It is the daily act of turning the key in your own lock, of deciding when to open the door and when to keep it closed. It is the sound of waves against rock, steady and unowned. Tonight the moon hangs low over the water, silvering the sand. I sit on the porch steps and breathe the salt air until the chill settles pleasantly into my bones. The key lies in my pocket, heavy and certain. I belong to myself again. That truth is simple, but it glows brighter than any porch light. The fight is behind me, the future uncharted. And for the first time in many months, every horizon feels wide open, every choice unmistakably mine. If my words reached your heart, that alone makes sharing worthwhile. Please like and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next. In the comments, tell me how this story spoke to you. I will be waiting to read your thoughts, because every voice matters here.